Today I want to show you the Datacolor Spydercube and how you can use this to get a good white balance in images such as the scene behind me, and we're going to go inside as well to probably a church somewhere here in central France. Let's go and let's see how this will work and how it can improve the white balance in our images. My name is Julian Elliott and I am a professional landscape and travel photographer. If you're interested in keeping up with what it is that I do, make sure you click subscribe down there and click on the notification bell up there for all new videos that are coming out, which are normally on a Friday at 6 o'clock Central European time in the evening. So what do we get in the box? Well, you get the aforementioned Datacolor Spydercube. There's a lanyard there, there's a pouch to keep it clean, and there's an instruction manual as well. So why do you want that pouch there? Well, you need that pouch because what you don't want apparently is that if this is kept near your clothing all the time, it's kept somewhere where you've got items that have been washed, it's got detergent, it will actually ruin the surface there. We don't want the surface ruined with this. But let's get on and explain exactly what this thing is, how we can use it, and how we can get good white balance in our images using the Datacolor Spydercube. So why would you want to go to the expense of having something like this in your kit bag? Well, if you're serious about photography, and certainly for me this is my full-time professional job, I'm serious about getting my images looking right as much as they can in camera, and then when I'm post-processing is making sure that those images look as good as they can. And that for me really does hinge on at times the white balance. So with this, what you can use is you have these reflective surfaces here. So you've got, for example, there's a mid-tone, there's the grey there, you've got your white there, which is 96% white, and you have this black, which is 5% black. There's also this hole here, which I'll explain, and this on here, which I'll explain again in a minute. But basically that's what you want to be doing, is if you can, you want to be having something where you can easily look into your images, and if you've got a test image, you can take, for example, like I'm doing now, I could calibrate the video by using this white balance tool here, the Spydercube. Basically what I can be doing is just using those reflective surfaces to get an accurate white balance of the light that's there, the side light that's falling on me, and it's there falling on that Spydercube. So let's talk a little about going out of gamut. So for example, you have this globe here, which when, for example, if I'm holding this up now, what you would probably see is because the sun is there directly 90 degrees to me, you're going to be getting specular highlights here. I can see the reflection of the sun in that globe. This hole here, basically what this is showing is if when you're post-processing in, for example, Lightroom, in Adobe Lightroom, in Adobe Photoshop, when you're looking at this hole here, this will be 100% black, or it would be 0% black as it were, but basically this is entirely black, this hole in here. So if, for example, in Lightroom, in Adobe Lightroom, you're seeing this as being out of gamut, that when you, and I will show you a little bit later in Adobe Lightroom, that if this is totally black, it's 0%, it should not be. This should be 5% black, this will be 0% black. So again, it's a very useful tool in order to gauge exactly where the light levels are in our images when we're then post-processing the images that we've taken here in the field, as it were. So how can we use this in our images? Well, you can hand hold it, and as you can see, because obviously there's the weight there, it's falling down, and what you want to do is actually have this hole pointing forwards towards the camera so you know where your gamut is. Of course, with this is always there to the globe, it's because it's round, but you don't want, for example, this side here, you want this side where you've got this hole pointing directly towards the camera so you know exactly where it is. Now it does have, on the bottom, there is a small hole there which you can put, and you can tripod mount the Spydercube there, so you've got a couple of different options in order to get this in your image. What I'm going to do is where the side light is here falling on me, I'm just going to take a self-timed picture holding up the cube there. You can also, of course, hand hold it as well. So I'll just do this, make sure it's in my image, and then what I'm going to do is use that when I get back and post-process to see the difference between the balance, the white balance in camera against what this will produce and I'm sure that you're going to see a difference between using this and using the auto white balance in the camera. Before you go anywhere near a device such as this Datacolor Spydercube, what you should really be doing first of all is learning how to get the correct exposure in your camera. That's going to save you a huge amount of problem when it gets back to the digital workstation, either in Adobe Lightroom or Adobe Photoshop. Once you know and you're comfortable with getting your exposures right in camera, either using filtration or, for example, as I'm going to explore a little bit later, doing an interior with different exposures, then we can start introducing this and then see how much difference it makes. So what I want to do now is basically do a couple of different scenarios. One here, so we've got the early morning light, it's about 9 o'clock, it's the end of March 2021, there's a side light there, the sun's not too high, so it's nice morning light that's coming across here, and I guess it's a field of barley, I guess maybe, but I want to take a shot with me with this so we know exactly what the white balance is, and then I'm also going to do a couple of different shots as well with the white balance. I'm going to do an auto white balance shot, so we're going to see what that produces. I'm going to do a white balance with daylight, and then I'm going to take a shot with this, with me, and then we're going to see what the white balance is with this, and then put that into the final image, then compare all three. So you can see the difference between using daylight, auto white balance, and then actually calibrating properly the white balance with a device such as this, the Datacolor Spydercube. There is the scene that I want to photograph. You could see behind me when I was filming the main scene, there is that lone tree there. Yes, off to the side is a farmhouse, but I'm obviously not going to include that. So what I've done is I've got my camera set up. It's a 5D Mark IV. There's a 24-70 on the front at 70mm. What I've done is I'm on f11. I've focused on the tree there. You can see it's 1/15 of a second. Let's go into the menu. Let's go into the white balance controls of my camera, if I can get it up quickly. So you've got auto white balance there. So we're set on auto white balance. We're good to go. Let's take a photograph. So you can see it kind of looks okay. It looks as if it's pretty much there, auto white balance. So let's look at the exposure. Let's look at the histogram. Everything is there. Maybe I could push it up a notch. Let's put it up again. Let's see what happens. Make sure it's not overexposed. Okay, so it's not overexposed. That's good. So we can always, for example, in Lightroom, bring down any highlights and things like this. Now let's go back into the white balance. Let's change it to daylight. So it says that it's approximately 5,200 degrees Kelvin. I'm sure if you remember your science lessons, you will remember the Kelvin scale. It's what we use in photography for our white balance. Now, again, let's take a photograph. Now, probably very difficult to see if there is actually any change between the white balances when you're looking at the full image. If I go there to there, I can actually see there is a difference. So the main image looks slightly warmer to me, and the next image with the daylight white balance is actually a little bit cooler. Now, looking at the histogram on the back of the camera, you may or may not be able to see this, but basically this image here, this is the auto white balance, and you can see where the red, green and blue is, that the blue is shifted over. Now if I click it over to the next image on the daylight, you might be able to see that the blue channel shifts. So there's a definite shift, and as I said, I can personally see it. I see enough photographs every day that I can see the barley here, or whatever it is that's growing in the field. It looks very, very cool. That's earlier on this morning. You don't want that picture there, but you can see this is a lot warmer and this is a lot cooler. Now let's introduce the Datacolor Spydercube into the image, and then let's see how much difference that makes in order to get our final image. So I've taken a shot of me with the cube, as you can see there. Now if I zoom into this, one of the immediate things that you can see is that, for example, you may be able to see is where the hole is there, it is definitely darker than this. On the main image there, if I come out, you will see there's the highlight indicators there on that white. So maybe I am pushing the raw file, but it does seem to be overall exposed correctly. It should be where it is. but we can use this here. We can actually gauge where it is that our light should be and what our white balance should be in our final image. So I will use this. You'll see the difference, that basically I'm going to take a white balance reading off of that in Adobe Lightroom. That's what I use to process my raw images, and then we will see exactly where that white balance will be and what it should be. We'll use the Datacolor Spydercube in order to set our white balance, take that white balance and then transfer it onto one of the other images that I took. Or if I just take a fresh image again, then I could do that again. But yeah, let's basically do that. So there you go, that's an exterior shot. Let's go find some woodlands, and then also let's go find a really nice church interior somewhere here. So I talked about doing an interior. I've come to the city of Poitiers. Here is the church that's known as Notre-Dame-la-Grande. Beautiful Romanesque church. I think maybe it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but I can't remember. If it is, it's not hard to see why. Now, why did I come here out of all the other churches that I could have chosen? You'll notice that it's all painted here inside this church. This is what it's famous for. I thought this would be a perfect place to show the difference between auto white balance and the Datacolor Spydercube, to see how the two compare, to see which one looks, at the end of the day, a lot more natural, either the Datacolor Spydercube or auto white balance from the 5D Mark IV. Let's see when we put the two side by side and put them to the test as to which one's going to come out on top. What you're looking at the moment is my camera in portrait orientation. It's f11, an exposure of 15 seconds. Now if I look at the histogram on the back of the camera, I can probably open it up maybe a little bit more. I do have a tilt shift lens on there, so I'm going to press the depth of field button and that will say if I'm going to overexpose it or not. So let's do 20-second exposure. So this is on auto white balance at the moment. So just in there, you probably can't really see, but it says it's on auto white balance. So 20-second exposure coming up. Now what I'm going to do in a minute is I have my second tripod. I'm going to set it up in front of the camera and then make sure that I can clearly see everything that I need to with the Datacolor Spydercube, and then hopefully what it's going to do, we can get a good white balance reading off of that. And there you go, there's the exposure, it's finished, so there's nothing that's overexposed, so let's get out the Datacolor Spydercube. So I've placed the Datacolor Spydercube in my scene, it's just here. I've actually made it properly focused as well, so that when I take my image I've got a lot more clear information to actually get off the thing. Now, things to note, there is a light up there, there's a strip light up there, so that's going to be overblown I guess when I've actually taken the image. We also have the half white there and the half mid-tone grey there, so we've got actually enough data. We can probably get a good white balance off. The other thing to notice, which it shouldn't be too bad, is on my other tripod here there is another little thing that's reflecting off. It's the Arca Swiss plate that's reflecting off the bottom third of the black there, but hopefully there's enough black again that we can start to really get some good readings. So I'm going to get my shot, and then we're going to go and find some woodland somewhere, and then we're going to test the difference between using, for example, shade on your camera, on the back of your camera, and then also using this Datacolor Spydercube. So let's get on with this and let's move on somewhere else. Now I know I said that the next scene was going to be woodland, but I was driving to go and find some woodland that I know that I thought would actually work quite well, and I came across this scene here and I thought, you know what, actually this is another good scene that the Spydercube could actually be tested on, because there's lots of colour here. You've got all these yellow flowers here interspersed with the green. There's a couple of blue flowers as well. Obviously there's blue sky, so it's very harsh lighting, actually side lighting, so the sun is there, but kind of almost behind the camera a little bit, so it's a bit of a front lit scene. And I thought, you know what, this could actually be quite good to see if it's possible to do, actually I'm doing a long lens shot, towards the church there with this field of flowers. I'm just thinking, is it or isn't it going to work? And this is what it's all about, doing these type of reviews for gear like this, thinking, you know, if you want to use this on a day-to-day basis, is it something that actually will really do what you want it to do, and is it practical to use in situations like this, whereby you've got this beautiful scene here, you really kind of do need to sort of think, well, I'd really like a nice white balance on this. Can I get it? Let's find out. Let's see if we can actually get a good white balance. So I'm going to take a couple of pictures again, like I did this morning. I'm going to do auto white balance, and I'll take the pictures and then show you as I'm going along, daylight, and then after that I'm going to have to turn off the camera, position the camera in order to get the final shot with the cube in it. But let's have a look. I'm not exactly sure how much you'll be able to see on the back of my camera. At the moment, there's the scene there, so you can see the field of flowers, beautiful it is, beautiful spring day. So I'm going to take an auto white balance shot. So have a look at the histogram, let's see where the colours are. So maybe I could actually pull that back a bit, the exposure. So it's on f11, 1/20th of a second. Let's pull it back 1/25th. So at least we're getting a good exposure in the meantime. Remember what I said at the very beginning, make sure that the exposure is right in camera. So we can see all the histograms pushed across, right across there to the right hand side. There's no real blacks in it. Now let's change that to daylight balance. So it's 5,200 degrees Kelvin. Take another shot. Now let's look at the JPEG again. Let's again look and see what it's done to the histogram. So between auto white balance and daylight balance, what it's doing is, you may or may not be able to see, but the blue channel is again shifting across like it did this morning. So let's now set up my other tripod and get in the Spydercube in this scene, and then see how we can get a good and accurate white balance off of the Spydercube. So I found my woodland, and it's near to where I live. Now you might be thinking, is this it? Well, actually this is how it can be in central France. The woodland isn't that interesting. It's not, for example, like in the United Kingdom, where there's loads of ancient woodland. There's all sorts of interesting woodland to see, and forests and stuff like that. We have forests here, but anyway, digressing. This is a perfect place really to show the Datacolor Spydercube, because we've got the shadow coming in from the trees. We're kind of in the woodland. There's actually some cloud coming over, so the sun may go behind some cloud when I'm filming this. If it does, then it means we can perfectly test what it's like being in the shade. And what I am going to do is flip through a few different white balance settings on my camera to show you the auto white balance. I'm going to show you daylight, because as you can see the sun is beating down on me. I'm also going to show you the white balance for shade, go through them, and then we're going to also then add after I've done that third and final shot, we're going to add in the cube, the Spydercube. So let's get on with different shots. I'll show you each one as I take them, so you can see how the histogram moves. And it's really important to learn how that histogram works. I did watch a photographer, I think it was last year, quite a well-known photographer on YouTube, saying, beginners, you don't need to worry about the histogram. Beginners, you do need to worry about the histogram. There is no point learning things and then going back and having to undo knowledge. Learn what it is that you're looking at. Is going to help you so much, because things like the cube are going to help you with your color correction. If you don't understand color correction, you need to be learning it to really understand how to correctly and properly process your images. Anyway, let's get on to the scene that's behind me. So before I begin, let's make sure that the white balance settings are correct. So here, well, correct for the demonstration purposes, we've got the white balance, auto white balance. So, as I keep saying, make sure that before you even introduce something like the Spydercube, make sure you've got your exposure right in camera as far as you can. Do remember that what you're looking at when the photograph has been taken is a JPEG inside the camera. It's very, very different when you see the raw file back on the digital workstation. In any case, so what I'm going to do is just slightly adjust that, get a little bit more depth of field. So I've got this tree here. It's not the most amazing scene, but it's something. It's on auto white balance. Let's take that. Let's see what it does. So looking at the histogram, we've got the reds which are pushed back. There's the greens coming in, and then the blues are starting to go off the scale a little bit. And I'm guessing that's basically because there's actually quite a lot of blue sky up there. Now, let's take the next shot. So we want daylight, because we are still effectively in daylight. Let's take that shot. Let's see what it does with the histogram. So, if we bring up both shots now, let's compare the two histograms. The red channel is moving ever so slightly to the right hand side on the daylight balanced image. It doesn't look as if there is actually, yep, there is a change as well in the blue channel. The blue channel is being pushed to the left, the right channel is being pushed to the right. So it's a start. It doesn't look too bad when you look at the back of the camera. When you look at the image, it pretty much looks as it is, but there's always a subtle difference. Now let's do, just for argument's sake, shade and see what that does. So what this will do is it will really warm up the image when it's in shade, so it won't make it look so cold and uninviting. Let's take that shot there. So you'll see, well, you might be able to see in the back of the camera, it looks very warm. So if I bring up the info, the back of the Canon there, so let's look at the histogram again. So you'll see there, as I cycle through them, it moves all the time. Now, what I'm going to do now is basically get the Spydercube in front of the camera, get the light falling on the Spydercube, get a shot of it, and then we can get the correct white balance when we're back in the digital workstation. So let's do that. So I've got a few shots today to test out the Spydercube, the Datacolor Spydercube, to see how it's going to perform within Lightroom. We got the field this morning with the tree. We got the church in Poitiers, beautiful interior of the church. A long lens shot looking towards that village church there across the field with the yellow flowers. Very tricky to see what it's going to be coming up with as far as the white balance. Very kind of high contrast light there. So is it going to be able to work out how I think it might do or not? We will see. And then lastly, here, 4 different scenarios. Each one as well has tried to take a variety of white balances within the camera. So we've got the daylight for the majority of it. There's also, I didn't do the interior of the church as anything other than white balance because it's just too much kind of think, well, what could it have been? But that's going to be auto white balance, and then adding in the Spydercube to see what it does. Here, it'll be interesting to see what it does. Going through the different scenarios, I will say to you now, it's not going to be shade. That definitely will not work. It looks too warm, looks too muddy, that's for sure. It's probably going to be somewhere between, I would say, the daylight and the auto white balance. The long lens shot, I guess we'll see again. But anyway, let's get to the digital workstation. Let's see what it does, and let's see how our white balance can look from going from in the field to the digital workstation. So let's now take a look at the digital workstation and let's see what we can do in Lightroom. Now this first image that you're looking at here, this is taken with auto white balance. So you can see it looks kind of okay. It looks to me a bit muddy in some respects. Now what I'm not going to do is adjust any of these highlights or whites, shadows, sliders, anything like that. Right now I'm only interested in the white balance. Now this first image here, what I had done, this is taken at f11 1/15 of a second. What I did during the video is I decided to actually open up the exposure. Now I want you to notice the white balance. At the moment it's on 5400 and a tint of 0. By opening up 1/3 of a stop, it then increases the white balance by 50 degrees. Notice it's a lot less muddier than the original image. For me, certainly it looks a lot nicer. Obviously the histogram is pushed over to the side. So there we go, that's auto white balance there. Now let's look at the daylight white balance. So it's a lot bluer to my eyes when I look at this. Certainly when you look at the sky overall, you can see it's a lot bluer with the daylight white balance from within the Canon 5D Mark IV. So it's come down. That suggests that obviously it is a lot bluer because we're going towards the blue side of the temperature rather than the yellow side. Now let's look at the Datacolor Spydercube and then see what that does. Now when you look at the image that's taken with the Datacolor Spydercube, I took it in again daylight white balance on my Canon 5D Mark IV. As I mentioned in the video, there are certain things you need to be aware of. Now this here is, at the moment it's showing that it's overblown. That's correct, that's how it should be. This though is not. This, you can see these highlights are overblown here. Ideally this doesn't want to be overblown. Here, this is the black. So this black here, this should be around 0. It's actually around 5% or so. You can see there On the histogram, it's 4.9, 4.2, 3.6%. And then up here, this is ideally what you want as 5%. So this needs to be a lot darker. Anyway, let's see, just by clicking the eyedropper here and then going on the grey and then inspecting this. Now if I hover around the grey, what you'll see is it says the red channel is 85.5, the green is 84.1, and the blue channel is 81.9. If you understand how your RGB values work, you will understand that because this is a neutral grey, all of those RGB values should be roughly the same. So the R and the G are roughly the same, but the blue channel is not. There is a bit of a problem. So what it's going to do when I click this eyedropper is it's going to add in some yellow in the blue channel. So if you notice on the histogram up here, the blue has then peeked out from underneath here. If I just reset this, I'll just show you again. Keep your eyes up here with the blue. So at the moment you can see there's a bit of the magenta that's sticking out there. So let's get the eyedropper again. Now watch that blue. There you go. So it's come out. It looks a lot nicer. So let's compare the Datacolor Spydercube white balance with the daylight. So you can see there's a bit yellow there. And actually I think that plays out. You can see here the yellow is a lot more towards the shadows rather than the highlights there. So it's shifted across. And then this is the auto white balance. So according to the camera's auto white balance, it should be at 5,450. Using the Datacolor Spydercube, we're at 4,450, and it's taken off a little bit of tint as well. So I think what you have to do with these types of things is you have to look at it and you have to make a decision for yourselves to say, is it or isn't it what I want? Is that what I would want? Actually, I kind of do like it. I think it does look very, very nice. So when I can look at this particular image here, it looks a bit muddy in the tree and in the sky. Certainly the blue from the sky looks really nice from the Datacolor Spydercube. The tree, it's looking a lot less muddy. The greens and the grass, they look a bit yellow there. So that's played out here. You can use it's mid-tones because it's the yellow there. And then the auto white balance. And again, I find the sky a bit muddy. Now you can, of course, take two images into Photoshop and then mask, and then you can like the blue sky and then mask in the grass that you like, but that's another tutorial. Anyway, so that's the tree. That's how the Datacolor Spydercube actually dealt with the tree. Let's go on to the church in Poitiers. Here is the church in Poitiers. Now, as you can see, there is some light falling in from the right hand side. That's where the sun roughly was coming across here. This is the very first image that I took, so it was a 15-second exposure. So you can see it looks kind of pretty much exposed as I would like it to be. However, there's maybe too much black. You can see actually that's down here in the shadows. Then what I did is I opened it up to 20 seconds. You can see the tripod shifted a little bit, but that's okay. It's still where I would want it. But this is only demonstration purposes at the end of the day. So you can see this is auto white balance. So we've got 3,950 on the temperature and then 11. When you're looking at this histogram up here, everything is kind of there. This is to be expected, the blue. This is in the shadows. What I then did is I added in the Datacolor Spydercube. Now notice it's exactly the same exposure. It's a slight shift in the temperature there from 3,950 there to 3,850, and then the tint has gone down 1. Now, this is where things get interesting. Now, before I actually recorded this video, what I wanted to do is just look at each image and see what it did for myself and just see how it would play out. So let's take a look at this spot down here. Now, you see it's actually quite overblown. This was the grey. So this grey side here, this is where ideally you should be taking your indication from. Now this here, this is grey, I will give you that, but it's 36.8, 34.8, 32. Maybe it would be worth looking at the two of them just to see what it does. actually, and I think that's worth doing. It's always worth, although the manufacturer might say to you, do absolutely this, maybe just fiddle around, just have a look and see what is to your own taste. So let's click here and then let's see what it does. It's added a huge amount of blue here. Now, some of you may find it pleasing, some of you not. If I undo that, if I press Control Z, Command Z, if you look at this column here, this is the one that sticks out to me a lot, and then this one here. So if I go in here, notice how blue this becomes. I really like actually that red there. If I do the undo, it's become a nice pleasing red that's there. So would I keep this particular one? I think actually I would. I think this has really helped it. Now let's undo this again, and then let's go into the color picker, and then let's go on this side of the cube, because it's actually not far off, I would say. So you can see here you've got the red channels 92.5, the green channel's not far behind 91.1, the blue channel is 85.4. So it says that there's maybe too much blue. So actually, let's go here. Again, we've got a similar-ish thing. We've got red 36.5, 34.5 or so. You can see it's moving the mouse around there. 31.7. So again, the blue channel is less than the red and the green. So let's click there. And you can see actually, you look at it and you think, yes, not bad, but honestly, I think it really is. Just clicking on there. And this just looks so much more nicer, this red here. These colours, they do look a lot more vivid. Now, let's move on to the next scenario, which is the village that I was not going to go to and do any demonstration, but actually I did it for the purposes of this video, just because it's actually quite a bright day. This is auto white balance, so it's at the moment it's saying it's 5,250 degrees Kelvin there, and then I put it on daylight, so it's gone back to the camera's 5,050. And then this is with the Spydercube. So I kept it on again, not auto white balance, on daylight white balance. Notice the really nice greys here and the whites. Yes, this is overblowing, but that's okay, because actually this is where I want to get my reading from. Notice now, when you're in full daylight outside, the sun is shining directly onto that cube there. Notice the red, the green and the blue. They are all pretty much equal now. So I haven't done anything yet. So let's just click. Keep your eyes again on that histogram. Did you see there's a tiniest shift here with the blues in the highlights? So if I undo, again, watch here. Watch how this up here shifts to the right. There you go. Does it look a lot nicer? I think the blue in this case in the sky, here it looks kind of okay. Here it looks a lot muddier. This is how tricky it can be doing landscape photography and getting a white balance in the landscape itself. So for example, if I was doing a fashion shoot, then the model would be, you know, not far away from the camera. But I'm looking at a subject, for example, that's right in the background. It's very far away. It should still ordinarily work, but you know, it is interesting to see what these things do. So let's move on to the Woodland. Now this was taken with auto white balance. You can see it's done a pretty good job. The blue in the sky looks really nice. I like that. Maybe the exposure could have been opened up a tiny bit, but that's okay. It looks as though everything is there. We've then got daylight. Notice how much muddier that's become. You can see, certainly in the trees here, it's a lot warmer now in those tree trunks there. It's a lot warmer. And then let's go to shade. So shade, you obviously do not want to be working in shade with this particular image like this. It looks so muddy with the colors there. Watch that histogram between auto. Notice this yellow here. Then we're going to go to daylight. You can see how it's increasing. There's some red that's coming in there. And then look how much more that's come out now, the yellow and the red. So it's become a lot muddier. Now, I added in the Datacolor Spydercube, and I can't remember what white balance I put it on. I would suspect it's auto white balance, But again, like the village, we've got some really nice kind of greys here. The white's not overblown, the grey there, everything's as it should be. And then notice here, for the first time, this has actually done what you would expect it to do. It's on 0. That's what it should be. This is just above 0. This actually needs to be around 5%. And then we've got this here. This is the white, it's not overblown. And then we've got the grey tone, the mid-tone. So let's click on that. Now it's warmed up the image. Now again, you might look at this and think, wow, is it what I really want? Is it or isn't it the effect and the white balance that I really, really want within my image? I think with these types of tools, you have to look at them and go, wow, is this really going to work for me in the everyday work that I do? I think in certain circumstances, the Datacolor Spydercube is going to be an absolute gem to keep in my camera bag. It's small, it's easily carryable in my bag. There's the small bag that it goes in, the small pouch to keep it clean. It's not too difficult to set it up at times. Now, sometimes it is. If you're, for example, in the church, I had to carry another tripod with me to then set it up to be able to do the long exposure. But for example, if you're outside, let's say near to the village here, and you wanted to get a nice white balance reading for, say, video or for a still image here, you can see the exposure is 1/25 of a second. You could be able to hand hold that if you just up the ISO a little bit and took down the f-stop. If you widen the aperture, you'd get a nice kind of effect there. So you'd be able to get a nice still image with the Datacolor Spydercube and then get your white balance. So I think that overall, would I say to people go and buy it? I think look very carefully at what it is that you do in your work as to whether this is a purchase that you would make. Personally, would I buy it? Because of the amount of work that I do and the different areas that I do, I definitely would consider having the Datacolor Spydercube in my bag at all times. So there you go. There's a look at how we can use that Datacolor Spydercube to get great white balance in our images. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do subscribe and then click on the notification bell up, I can't do it with my hands, but it's up there in the top right hand corner of YouTube. See you again next week, sometime, somewhere, doing something. We will see. Take it easy, folks. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.